I told myself I would do Vlogmas this month and it's already December 1st at like 7 p.m. and I haven't filmed a thing or even brainstormed what I'm gonna film. But I'm about to do a bunch of crafting that I'm relatively new to. I've been doing polymer clay for the first time and really loving it, so I'll show you some stuff that I've been making. But I think today I'm going to try to do some Decoden phone cases or light switch covers. This is something that I've always wanted to do. I've done a lot of rhinestoning before. I love rhinestoning phone cases and light switch plates and things like that, and I want to like do a whole bunch of stuff. I am in the process of wanting to start an Etsy store, so I will link that below if you guys ever want to check it out. But it's really just going to be my original creations doing polymer clay. Here are some of the things that I've made so far. So I also have another video showing like my very first time doing polymer clay stuff. And once you start doing it, I feel like it's really fun to just kind of get your brain working and seeing all the things you want to make. It's really easy to get trapped in a hole of looking at videos for inspiration, looking what other people are doing. And I think that that's a way to accidentally like plagiarize other people's art. So you can kind of look at tutorial videos for things like polymer clay to get yourself going and learn how you're supposed to work with it, figure out materials that you need and things like that. But I would say once you actually get the materials in your hands, then just do it and see what you come up with for the first couple times. Some of the clay pieces that I've been making, I either want to use to make like jewelry with them. It's going to be really fun. But because I also do this like Decoden style type of stuff, I want to also make my own charms to put on the Decoden or the rhinestone cases that I'm going to make. So just come along with me while I do some of this crafting and we can see what we come up with. If you're not familiar with Decoden, a big part of it is kind of making this fake whipped cream type of thing. So I have this like silicone caulking gun that is good for making the base. You literally just get it at a hardware store, and then you can mix it with acrylic paint, and then you use a piping bag like the kinds that you would use for frosting, and you can kind of pipe the silicone out in a way that kind of gives you like a little frosting thing. But once it hardens or like kind of firms up and dries, then it will actually be long lasting and durable, and you can use it on things like phone cases or whatever other surface you want to do it on. And so I have a phone case and I have a light switch plate, so I'm going to use one of those as a tester, knowing that my first one might not come out the best, so hopefully I don't completely waste it. So yeah, let's just see what we make. Some of these designs are actually things I laid out last night, and I wanted to document some of the designs because it's really good to like lay out how you want it to look so you know where you want to put it later. So I think this kind of layout, if I put the kind of fake frosting in between with these charms, I think would look super cute. Let me play around with the layouts a little bit more and see which one I want to test on. And then I also have this little box, which I found. I feel like this might be a good thing to start testing with because this is, I don't even know what this is from originally, so I'm not gonna be too upset if it gets messed up, so maybe I'll start with this. This might be a little ambitious for my first attempt, but I might do like a purple base and then like white frosting around the side and then just put purple little trinkets all over. We're just gonna see what happens. So for now, I'm just going to be working with the lid of the box and putting the base on the side. I bought these two types of silicone that I think are pretty much the same thing. One is advanced, one is all-purpose. The tutorial I was watching said either would work, so I'm just starting with the all-purpose. And you also are going to need a caulking gun. Here was the first thing I realized, is I had no idea how to use this before. All of the tutorials I was watching gave no indication on how to use this, so definitely make sure you're familiar with these before you even start this project. I also had some cups to mix the silicone with the acrylic paint. You want as many cups as colors you're going to be working with, something to stir them with, so I just have these plastic forks. I don't know why I chose forks, that was obviously going to be a problem later. And then you also want your piping bags. Any piping bags I think will work, but I saw something online that said that plastic piping tips were better than metal, and of course I got metal. Not sure why one's better than the other, but yeah. First thing I'm doing is using alcohol wipes to clean off the surface of the lid. There was kind of tape stuck on it, so I'm getting that off as well, just to make sure the silicone will properly stick to it. I saw it was recommended to make sure the surface of whatever you're working on is roughened up, so the silicone will really get into those ridges and stick better. Otherwise, it can just peel off. So you can use sandpaper. The tutorial I was watching was using scissors. I'm using an X-Acto knife. None of this seems safe. Don't do it this way. I didn't have proper sandpaper, so that's probably the safer bet. Make sure you're never going towards yourself with the X-Acto knife. Maybe just don't do this yourself, please. Like, just don't try this at home. And then I'm using another alcohol wipe to wipe it clean again, because that probably created a lot of dust in the crevices. I don't know why it took me so long to figure out how to use a caulking gun properly or how to even open this. I don't know if this is common knowledge, but I had to look up a tutorial. So first, when I cut the tip, you're apparently supposed to cut it at a 45-degree angle, and I just went straight. Not sure how much of a difference that makes. And then I put it in the caulking gun right away and tried to use it, not realizing that you have to actually like poke a hole underneath first, and all I had to poke a hole was a freaking paper clip, whatever this thing is. And so I ended up having to poke like multiple holes. Even by the end of this video, I feel like I never opened this properly, because for the entire rest of this first attempt at doing Decoden, it took so long to actually get the silicone out from the container, and I think that was the biggest part of my problem for this whole rest of the video. And spoiler alert, the title of this video includes the fact that this is going to be a failed attempt. I'll just tell you that right now. I tried 3 separate times to work with the silicone, starting over from square one of putting it in these cups, and every single time I think it just took me so long to get it out and into the cup that it was already like halfway hardened before I even got to the point of putting it in the piping bag. So here I'm mixing in some acrylic paint. The tutorial I watched said to just use the tiniest drop of acrylic paint, so I already feel like I put more than you're supposed to. It took me so long to get this amount of silicone out, and I was like, you know what, that's gotta be enough, it's gotta be fine. This was just to kind of spread on the base of the lid of the box, and it looked like a decent amount, but then as soon as I started stirring it, it like disappeared into nothing once it was actually mixed, so I had to go back in and add some more. You also see me stirring it here with the back of the fork, because I quickly realized that stirring it with like the fork side of the fork wasn't really going to be effective. After stirring this for just a couple seconds, I realized I should probably put some gloves on, because I was realizing that the smell of this silicone was so intense, and I probably also shouldn't be getting it on my hands. I did not expect it to be such an intense smell. It smelled very heavily of vinegar, and this is the funniest part of this whole situation to me, is I was only even trying Decoden because I wanted an alternative to using E6000 glue, which is also really bad to breathe in, and you should probably be wearing proper masks or working in a well-ventilated area to use that. And so in my mind, I was thinking Decoden was a good replacement for that as a less intensive kind of chemical to work with. But no, this was way more pungent and intense than any other glue that I've worked with. This was some heavy-duty stuff. So this was supposed to be the easy part. I assumed I would just mix a little bit of color with the silicone and kind of just use that as the base. I'm trying to use this kind of frosting spreader to spread it nice and evenly. I just wanted to have the look of frosting on the base of the cake before going in with the piping tools and actually adding in the piped icing, which is that's the part that's supposed to be nice and fancy and a little bit more time consuming. So why did the part that's supposed to be easy take me this long, okay? And now mind you, I had already put the silicone for the piping bag in that other cup, right? So I had been letting it sit there for so long, not realizing that it was probably already well along its way to being hardened already. And so after mixing the other silicone, I realized that what was in this cup was not going to be nearly enough to do the piping. So not even realizing it was probably already hardened, I added more silicone, added more paint, and overall, between the time where I put that first bit of silicone into that first cup to when I finally got it in the piping bag, it must have been like an hour. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. This took me so long for no reason. All the tutorial girlies make it seem so easy, so tell me why I was struggling so much. And keep in mind, most of these clips are sped up to 5 times the speed, and most of it is actually sped up till 10 times the speed. That's how long this was taking me. So I know something was horribly wrong here. I was not doing this correctly. So to put it into the piping bag, you could open the piping bag up in a cup and kind of use it, hold the bag open while you put everything in there. I was definitely having trouble using this fork to get it in there, and the fact that the sides of the cups were so ridged made it hard to actually scoop them out of the crevices of these cups. My second attempt in this video, I actually switched to cups with smoother sides. Definitely don't use forks, use popsicle sticks or something, and use cups that are a bit smoother. That will help you along the way, as some beginner mistakes that I made. I also realized I was so wrapped up in the process of getting it into the piping bag that I did the worst mistake you can do as a beginner, is I accidentally forgot to put the piping tip in to the piping bag before I even scooped the silicone in. So I then decided to transfer it into a separate bag. At one point I put the piping tip in wrong, and so I had to take it out, but it was kind of caught in the bag. I was trying to get it out with the scissors, and I bent the piping tip, which was going to mess up the shape of the icing. I thought transferring it to another piping bag was going to be such a good idea and save the day, but it just absolutely was way too stiff by this point to actually come out of the other bag smoothly, and it was just pure chaos. I could not get it to budge even a little bit. But I was still trying so hard, even though it was so clear it was not going to work. I used anything I could to kind of push the icing to the surface, and then by the time I got to the tip, it just would not come out, and I had to start over. Even the icing silicone that I had already put on the box lid was probably too hardened, and that by the time I was going to be ready to put the charms in it, they wouldn't stick anymore. So I did peel it off. But tell me how satisfying this is, how nicely it just comes right off. So here's my second attempt. I'm just gonna show this really quickly to show where I kind of learned from my mistakes, but not entirely. So the first thing I did was I made the cups shorter. I think having such big cups was making it harder because it was just harder to get the silicone in and out as easily. If I had just started doing the icing from here, I think I would have been okay. I finally got it into the piping bag, and it was ready to just put right onto the box lid, but then I was still so tied to the original design that I wanted to do of putting that first layer of icing onto the box lid first. So I was able to do that again and get that nice and evenly smoothed out on top of the box lid, but by the time I got back around to doing the piping, I think it again hardened too quickly. I thought keeping it in the piping bag at this point would protect it from the air enough that it would be able to stay soft enough to come through the piping tip, but by the time I tried to push it through the tip, it just was not coming out all over again, and I was so frustrated at this point. It was like 2:30 in the morning, and I really wanted to finish this, or at least get a couple of attempts done, so I really quickly stirred up a third batch of the silicone white for the piping bag, and at this point I was so tired that I was being sloppy, and when I cut the opening for the piping tip, I made it too big. So I tried to do a couple of testers here. I was also being way too much of a perfectionist for someone who could barely even get it to this point. I did a couple of testers. The first one that I put on the box lid, I ended up just taking off because I didn't like the shape of it, and then by that point, the piping tip actually fell out of the bag entirely, and I was just getting so frustrated. I ended up moving this amount of silicone to another bag just to see what I could do with it, but at that point there was so little left in the bag that I ended up just doing a couple of testers, knowing that it wouldn't actually result in any final project, just to get myself used to actually pushing the silicone through the piping bag, because it took me hours to even get to this point. I figured I would at least try. None of these looked how I wanted them to, of course, so even as I was doing this, I knew I was just going to completely take it apart and have to start over entirely another day. Honestly, it's gonna take me a lot to even want to try this again because it was so stressful, and the fumes from this silicone were so much more intense than I expected. This is something I'll definitely want to do in a much more well-ventilated area next time. I might literally get a proper ventilation mask for this, and I would take a lot more precautions next time. And here's a really satisfying 55 times speed cleanup process. So Decoden was actually like the worst experience of my life. I had to put this on halfway through because I realized how bad the fumes were. That was my first beginner mistake, is not realizing that this was just as like fume intense as a lot of other crafts that I avoid for that reason. Like I really love doing rhinestone phone cases and stuff like that, but I stopped doing it as often because I didn't realize the glue was like really bad to breathe in, and I was like, oh, I'll just do Decoden instead so I don't have to worry about that. Like, why did I never figure out that you shouldn't breathe that in either? Also, you can see how like greasy and oily I am now because I was like sweating. I feel like I just went through a war. I tried 3 times, and every single time it like got too hardened before I could actually get through the piping bag. And the third time I was like finally close to it, but I was being so careless by that point that I actually like made the hole in the piping bag too big, and the piping tip fell out. And at that point I just panicked and I gave up. And I kept also making too little because it was so freaking hard to get out of the caulking gun. Maybe I just like cut the hole too small in it, but it was coming out so freaking slow. So I think that was my first mistake, because then I was just getting into the cup way too slow. I'm so tired now. It's like, I don't even know what time it is. I think it's like 3 in the morning, but I have no idea. This was like the hardest craft I've ever done. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. I thought it was gonna be so fun and user-friendly and cute, and whenever I watched so many tutorials beforehand, and nothing could prepare me for what I just experienced. Like, I even had to look up how to like get the caulking gun open because I didn't even know how to do that before, and none of the tutorials actually specified. I need like a super in-depth tutorial, not these tutorials where they forget what it's like to actually be a beginner. I've had my air purifier on this whole time because I feel like I should not be breathing this in. I had to keep stopping my dog from coming in. She always wants to be sitting on me, and I didn't want her to breathe this in. I probably shouldn't even be in this room right now, to be honest. I went through like 5 pairs of gloves, and I just got those. I'm glad I did though. I literally got the gloves for resin, and I didn't even think that I would need it for this. I don't know, if you guys have any tips, if you are someone who does Decoden a lot, please do leave your tips, because I want to try this again, and I'm so excited to do it again. I wouldn't say excited, like I'm very nervous to do it again, but I'm excited to finally get a good end result, if that makes sense. I think I'm gonna try different materials. I'm gonna try getting the cream glue instead. I think doing like the silicone mixture is kind of like the cheaper, easier way to do it with just stuff from the hardware store, but you can actually buy like pre-mixed colors that are just ready to go in the bag, and I think that's gonna be the way easier route for me, because working with that silicone was such a pain, and I have so much of it. I have almost that whole bottle left still, and I also have a second bottle. So I feel like I should at least try a few more times with that. I just don't know, I had such big expectations, such high expectations, and that was just such a fail. If you guys want to see the materials that I did use, I will link them in my Amazon storefront below if you want to try this out. I also read online in the middle of doing this, one of the other things that's a lot better to have is plastic piping tips, so I will link some of those below. I feel like I have like the silicone under my nails and stuff, like I feel like it's in places that it shouldn't be. So Yeah, yes. Good night, everyone. I'm gonna try to post this for December 1st for my first day of, what the heck is this thing called? Vlogmas? I forgot why I even started doing this. I should have just posted something simple today. Maybe I will do that. I'll just record something else for the first and let this be the second day. So, okay. I'll see you guys in the next video. Follow my channel if you want to see my next attempts, because I will be posting another attempt. And also follow if you want to see my attempts on my first attempt on polymer clay, which went much better than this. So if you want to try a new craft and you want something less stressful, maybe go with that instead. I like crafts where I don't have to use like a face mask and gloves because I'm working with toxic chemicals. I think that's a good start for me. Okay, bye everyone.